from New York. No, we are in Laguna Woods, and it's the Laguna Woods Show with your host and moderator, Esther Grossfield. Here's Esther.
Hi, welcome to a Laguna Woods Show where every guest matters. Today we have a very special guest. He was a pain management specialist, and his name is Dr. Stephen Savlov. Hi, Doctor.
Hi, how are you?
So nice to have you here.
Well, it's nice to be here.
What is pain management?
Well, pain management comes in different forms. There's a medical approach where you can get a shot or take some medicine, opiates, and so on and so forth. My approach, as I'm a clinical and neuropsychologist, was a non-pharmacological approach. So with pain, there is what we call nociceptive pain, which is something happens when you scrape your knee or somebody pinches you or whatever. That pain is registered in your brain and it tells you that there's something wrong. Well, my approach to pain management was not exactly to the pain itself, but to the suffering that goes along with the pain.
Yes.
So pain, what we call acute pain,
Yes.
is up to 3 months. And then from 3 to 6 months, we call it chronic pain. And that's the time when people start organizing their life around their pain.
Yes.
I mean, they'll pick out certain chairs, they'll avoid certain activities, thinking that if they engage in these activities, they're going to hurt themselves again.
Yeah.
And we recommend that people actually talk with your doctor about what you're capable and not capable of. And for the most part, people have to learn how to deal with their pain. I mean, if it's not going away, then you have to learn to put life more in the foreground and pain more in the background.
And sometimes people, you were saying that the brain is a pharmacy,
Right.
and you want to get them off the pills.
Well,
how do you do
in
that?
the program I led for 16 years, the idea was we didn't say people had to stop their medications,
Yeah.
but by learning more effective coping strategies such as meditation, self-hypnosis. They worked with a physical therapist to learn how to exercise more safely. We have an occupational therapist who taught people how to have the occupation of a life. And we had a pharmacist who talked about medications and how they interact and so on. And we had a physical medicine and rehabilitation doctor who was an expert in musculoskeletal problems. And so we all work with the same patients. And my approach was more of a holistic approach, where we recognize that in our brain we have a little pharmacy
Yeah.
of neurotransmitters, chemicals that help to dampen down the pain.
What are they like?
Well, there's one is the endorphins.
Yeah.
A lot of people who exercise regularly know what that is because they get a kind of a lift
Yes,
in their
yes.
mood.
Yes.
There's nortriptyline, which gives you more energy. There's
Dopamine.
which is the brain's pleasure center.
Yeah.
And dopamine is what happens, let's say, when you fall in love or when you're having a joyous occasion. And so we try to encourage people to do activities that will help mobilize those neurotransmitters, those chemicals, and teach them ways of
Coping.
and how to I'm having a senior moment here. How to do activities that are going to promote their neurochemicals for the best. The opposite of that is when people are angry about their pain or they're depressed or whatever, your body or your brain produces other chemicals such as adrenaline and various types of negative chemicals that actually destroy your endorphins and serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine. So when you feel lousy, there's a neurochemical reason for that.
Wow.
And so a lot of the patients that I worked with were on some form of antidepressant, which kept up the serotonin levels, which helped with the mood and so on. So that's...
What kind of mood does a meditation do for a human being?
Well, meditation helps you to,
Relax.
well, take out some time for yourself.
Yeah.
Most of us are running around, especially here in Laguna Woods, where we have this activity and that activity, one after the other, and we really never take a look at who we are as a person. And so meditation helps you to understand your mind and what it is you're telling yourself. Because sometimes we tell ourselves a lot of negative messages, we criticize ourselves, we want what we call another now. You know, they don't want this, they can't believe this is happening, so they want another now. And meditation helps you to deal with reality as it is and accept reality as it is. Like, for instance, I broke my arm about 3 years ago in 7 places, and I have a rod in there that looks like a centipede with all the screws going into it. And I kind of laughed through the whole thing.
To the operation, you mean?
Well, before and after the operation and 8 months of rehabilitation, I kind of laughed through the whole thing and the doctor said, "You're not taking your condition very seriously." And I said, "Well, do you want me to get upset or be angry or whatever? I feel this is the best way for me to heal." And so I was tuning into having my endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and so on. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's just what I
Isn't
did.
that
I'm not saying
amazing?
everybody can do that, but my meditation helped me to focus.
Wow.
So my ability to focus and also to let things go. You know, like when you meditate, you have some thoughts. We all have thoughts going through
Yeah.
our brain. And what you want to do is observe those thoughts rather than react to them. Because thoughts are just thoughts. It's just
Yes.
pieces of information.
Yes.
It's not real events. I mean,
Yes.
just like people will say, you know, they're having conversations with people who aren't there. Wait till I tell him or her about what I think, and so on and so forth. And that's fantasy. That's a fantasy world. So so we use the phrase, "it is what it is."
Yeah.
Just dealing with what is versus another now or a fantasy or a dream or whatever.
So you think that people that are in pain, do you think the meditation would help?
Oh yeah, well, like I said, it mobilizes those chemicals. There are studies, I read one the other day from Harvard, where they used an fMRI and showed that the brain in the area of memory and the area of organization and decision making have increased in neurons.
Really?
Yeah, and what's really interesting is there's a area called the amygdala, which gets our flight or fight response going.
Yeah.
It shrank. So the more neurons in, you know, kind of in the prefrontal cortex and in the hippocampus increased, the amygdala shrank. So
That's amazing.
because you're not using it. If you're very calm
Wow.
If you're very calm. There was a study in Paris where they studied the taxi drivers.
Yeah.
And they found out the perceptual motor areas of the brain were a lot larger than the normal person. Because if you use it, it expands. If you don't use it, it shrinks.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So do you believe in stretching?
I'm not a physiologist. I do think that stretching
Before
movement.
activity.
Well, I used to be a runner, and I found that stretching after I ran, because my muscles were warm,
Yeah.
They were more pliable.
It's better because
Well, I'm
is
not.
it better
I can't.
before or
I can't
after?
answer as an
Yeah.
expert because
Yeah.
I'm not an expert.
Yeah, you're
but
not.
All I can answer is my own experience. And I found that stretching afterwards. That's why, they have this yoga where you're in a hot room, and allows you to stretch more.
Oh,
But I think I
wow.
think you need to work with like a physical therapist,
Yeah.
somebody who's knowledgeable about the body
Yeah.
and its limits.
Yes, yes.
And also the physical therapist has the records of the physician in terms of what kind of injury you might have or what kind of pain you have. But you need to work within that as opposed to, like some people join a gym
Mm-hmm.
and then, they go all out for a month and then they feel so tired that they stop going.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you think that if they were to do some stretching,
If
it
they
would be
did a little
better?
bit at a time, as opposed to
Right away.
make up for all these years that you haven't been stretching or moving. And there is something to what we call move it or lose it.
Yes, yes.
We find that with people, let's take chronic pain, if they're sitting on the sidelines of life until the pain goes away, they're going to be sitting a long time, and that sitting actually contributes to their experience of pain, which is what we call suffering, where their muscles become weak, their joints are not flexible, and so the very idea of moving can, or of not moving actually, can contribute to what you experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like dig yourself into a deep hole
Yeah.
because you haven't moved, or you haven't, you have this thought that if I move, I'm going to hurt myself again.
Yes. So they don't move.
Well, they
wanna
don't
get hurt.
move, or they try to move and they feel the pain, and so they sit back down.
Yeah, you were saying that some people take pills for like 20 years, and how could that help? After 20 years, it doesn't help anymore, huh? What do you
Well, my experience is that many people are on sometimes 20 years, sometimes 10 years, or whatever. And if you ask them, does this medication help? They'll say no. I still have pain. And I said,
It's not
so I
funny.
say to them, well, why are you taking these medications?
Yeah.
If it doesn't help and it contributes to, constipation and poor sleep and so on and so forth. And so if I'm working with a physician, that person's physician, then I would send a note saying that perhaps your patient needs to get off of what we call the short-acting medications, maybe replace them with long-acting. Well, short-acting is sometimes 4 to 6 hours, long-acting is 12 hours.
Oh.
The people who have these short-acting pain medications for years, they're always watching the clock as to when their next dose can be,
Oh.
because they want to be pain-free.
Yes.
And they, at the same time, they kind of become what we call gorked out. I mean, they're not very sharp. They're kind of feel like they're in a fog and so on and so forth. As opposed to, let's say, the long-acting pain medications, behaviorally, the person is less likely to watch the clock all the time and perhaps focusing on having a life.
Yeah, so how long do people suffer from pain? I mean, sometimes they suffer for months, sometimes years, and it just goes away. You said
true.
that.
I had this sciatica,
Yeah.
and it lasted for about 3 years. And I was walking with a cane.
Really?
And then all of a sudden it disappeared.
Just like that.
Yeah, I tried several ways of helping it.
Yeah.
Going to different physicians and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. But I found that by accepting it and not being angry because I have it, or
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that's the
Yeah.
reason
yeah,
why the pain went away? Because you accepted that?
right,
Really?
yes, because the opposite of that is not accepting it and being angry and depressed or anxious, and that actually makes your experience of the pain worse. It makes it, it heightens.
Wow.
It kind of lowers your pain threshold. Whereas if you accept and you do some meditation, you do some self-hypnosis, you kind of have a more relaxed lifestyle, you're creating those neurochemicals, and you're more likely to have the energy to have a life.
So, at what point should somebody call the doctor after they have pain? When at what point, like when they're depressed, or
Right.
so
Right,
what's
well-
the first thing to do?
Yeah. Well, what point? Well, it depends on the injury.
Yes.
I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
if somebody's bleeding,
Yes.
you go to the
Yes.
emergency room. If somebody, hit their knee,
Yeah.
there's no bleeding, it's still good to go to the doctor.
Yes. Yes.
So it's really an individual thing. You can't really say one size fits all.
Yeah. For the people out there that are watching, the audience, let's say if they've been like suffering for 4 years or something and they never did anything about it, they should just call a doctor. What kind of doctor should they call?
Well, my recommendation is somebody who specializes in a multidisciplinary, which means, like I had, the nurse, the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, pharmacist, physician.
Yeah, you were
And
in
myself.
charge of the whole
Right,
thing.
right. And so, the American Pain Society suggests that a person, an individual practitioner doesn't really have a lot to offer, like a physician, primary care physician, other than medications. Or they can refer you to physical therapy or to occupational therapy or whatever, which is not really a team approach. Because as time goes on, when you have discomfort, your life gets more complicated because, like I said, you start organizing your life around the
pain.
discomfort.
Yeah, the discomfort.
And so I would suggest you find a pain program.
A pain program.
Yeah, multidisciplinary, multimodal, which is modality is like myself as a psychologist. It would be, meditation, self-hypnosis, and cognitive therapy. But I would be working hand in hand with another, my other cohorts, in terms of working with this patient.
What kind of tools do people need when they have pain? I mean, they can use different like chairs, so
Right.
make themselves easy.
Right.
Like you had a chair, you told me.
Yeah.
A
Well, I had a
tripod chair.
chair. I had a cane that turned into a chair. So when we went to Europe, I could just, if we're in a long line, I could sit. This is when I had the,
The sciatica?
the sciatica.
Uh-huh.
But, the occupational therapist can teach you how to have your life in a more comfortable way. Like, for instance, we had a patient who liked to cook, but her pots and pans were on the bottom shelf, and she couldn't bend over. So it was recommended that she take a stool that goes down
Uh-huh.
and comes back up. And that allowed her to reach her pans and then go back up and start cooking.
Yeah. So you put less stress on the pain.
On the origin of the
Yes, exactly.
of the discomfort. Yeah.
That's the key.
Right.
To put less stress
Right.
on the origin
Right.
of the
but it
pain.
doesn't. But it
And
doesn't.
it just goes away.
Yeah. Well, I don't know
It
if
doesn't
it goes away.
but
A lot of people have to learn to have some discomfort.
yeah.
A lot of people just want to have no pain at all, and there are consequences for that, like I said, with the various medications.
Yes,
The
yes.
opiates especially.
Side effects.
Side effects and so on and so forth. So I had a program up in the Seattle area. It was
Yeah.
actually in Bremerton.
Yeah.
It was called the WARM program, the Wellness, Acceptance, Reactivation, Mindfulness, Pain Management Program. It
Yeah.
was based upon John Kabat-Zinn's at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center on his mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And we did some research, or we did some statistics, and we found that about half of the patients who went through the program got off half of their pain medications. And we
Really?
found that the other 50% or so got off all their pain medications. And
Wow.
when I interviewed people who got off all their pain medications, they said they would rather feel some discomfort than being gorked out. Rather than being in a fog or
Yeah.
everything, because everything slows down. Your intestines, and leads to
Really?
constipation.
The intestines.
Yeah, everything slows
down
down. Your
when you
heart slows down. Your breathing slows down.
I didn't think about the intestines also.
So I mean, people who take an overdose tend to die because they suppress the
The heart,
breathing
yeah.
and the heart and so on and so forth. So it really slows everything down.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Didn't think that the stomach is affected by that too. I just thought the
Yeah,
heart.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So you believe in Zumba Gold, which you're not selling it or anything like
Right.
that, but you believe. Why?
Well, my wife and I would go to the gym,
Yeah,
and you'd have to wait in line.
yeah.
All this. So I think she found this called Zumba Gold, and it's Zumba for people over 50.
Seniors.
For people over 50. And we found, that we weren't hurting.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you eventually, when you start out, obviously if you're out of shape, you're going to be breathing and so on and so forth. But as you do it more and more, and it's there's two discs. One disc is for cardiovascular, and the other disc is for light weights, as well as cardiovascular. And it's fun, because that's one thing about exercise. You've got to do something that's fun.
Yeah, so let's see. We're almost running out of time.
Okay.
It was very nice having you here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my
We
pleasure.
had a lot of information.
Mhm.
And maybe they should have a Zumba Gold here in Laguna Woods. That would be perfect for people.
Some people, yeah.
That would be perfect.
Yeah,
They should
yeah.
have Zumba Gold here. Somebody out there,
Right.
you're listening, start a Zumba Gold.
Well, if you really want, you asked about what kind of physician to find.
Yeah.
Find what we call physiatrist, P-H-Y-S-I-A-T-R-I-S-T. They are physical medicine rehabilitation doctors. They're experts in musculoskeletal problems, and they tend to work in a more holistic way.
Wow. Thank you so much for your information. Thank you
Well,
for coming.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching, and next time we'll have another interesting person. Thank you.